Good morning. So we'll start today taxation of individuals. So as you know, we looked at the last week, completed the company taxation. Basically, the company taxation we covered the special provision under the company tax under the Inland Revenue Act, as well as other connected topic as well. No. So individual tax is not much. Basically, we have to go through the special provisions as well as, so I given certain questions, so I given the answer also. I think we have to just go through the question with the answers as well, right, with me. Keep ready the TUT as well as the Inland Revenue Act with you. We'll start. Basically, look at the examination point of view, the individual tax, they are not tested much on this individual tax. Maybe the first exam paper under the previous syllabus, there was a question. Thereafter, I have not seen any of the special question on the individual taxation. But nevertheless, I think that's there in the syllabus. Therefore, we may have to cover it up. Suddenly, the examiner can test for a 10 to 15 marks. So what are we going to cover here? The chargeability of provisions. So like question, the section 2, the other provision of the Inland Revenue Act. The general provision of the Inland Revenue Act section 2 for the charging section will applicable for a individual as well. This is special provision there 34 subsection 4. Income split by a spouse with other spouse. Then we got to discuss about the undisclosed income of the individual. That is basically working out sums on that. And taxation of partners in a partnership. So would have studied in a business level on the previous syllabus the partnership taxation. So what I got to study here is how we are going to get the partnership share in the hands of individual partner to calculate the profit. That is the individual partner's point of view. So that's all. Chargeability, as you know, the section 2 is a charging section. Like in the other like in the other act, the section 2 is almost of the cases the charging section. So in terms of section 2 of the act, an individual is chargeable with income tax on taxable income or on final withholding payment. Therefore, consequently, the total income tax liability of an individual also, like other person, is equivalent to tax on taxable income and tax on final withholding payments. How to compute the tax on taxable income? Again, we looked at the initial days. Tax payable on the taxable income is computed, taking into account the taxable income multiplied by tax rate specified in the first schedule. The individual tax rates are given under item 1 of the first schedule. Tax on final withholding payment is computed. Take a final withholding payment which are defined under section 88. We will discuss so many times that. And apply the tax rates on that. Again, the first schedule, that's item 10 of the first schedule. That is withholding tax. Taxable income, section 3 provides the way of calculation of taxable income. Basically, you take all your assessable income coming from the sources, starting from employment income, then business income, investment income, and other income source. Aggregate those income sources we call assessable income from each source. They already give a deduction under section 52. The operating section is 52. The qualifying payment and reliefs. So as you know, the qualifying payment reliefs are given under 5th schedule. So the individual only is entitled for a reliefs. We discussed last day, the company is entitled for qualifying payments. By individual, apart from the qualifying payment, the individual is entitled for reliefs as well. Then when you come to income source, there's some income source. Basically section 5, they discussed already, provides the method of inclusion or exclusion of employment income. The item of inclusion as well as exclusions are given under section 5. But as you know, there is no deductible expenses in computing the employment income as per section 10. Section 6 is on the business income. Again, it tells you what are the items should be included in the calculation of business income, what are the items should be excluded in the calculation of business income. But apart from that, we have done taken into account the items to be included, subject exclusions. There are deductible expenses we discussed when it comes to business income, starting from section 10 to section 19. All are on the deduction rules. The section 10 is based on the disallowable item, that is expenses which are not allowable in the calculation of business income. We come to section 11 to section 19 are the deductions available against the income calculation. Then section 7 also we discussed, that's on the investment income. It tells you what are the items to be included in calculation of the investment income, and subsection 2 tells you what are the items to be excluded in the calculation of business income. So having taken into account the section 7, you take your item to be included, subject exclusions, then there are certain deductible expenses also applicable for investment income also. Not whole thing, certain items are discussed. We are applicable, I think we are already discussed. Right. So those are the things we have summary of that we discussed. I called as a chargeability summary of that discussion that we already discussed in the initial days, I believe. Therefore only we have to memorize that and applicable provision you have to you have to select and apply your calculation. Now I'll come to what are the tax rates applicable for individuals. Applicable tax rates. We got Illa Revenue Act. Can you go to Illa Revenue Act please? The first schedule item 1 is a bigger schedule. First schedule, where item 1 you get the tax rate for individuals, the resident as well as non-resident individual. So we have, for the time we are concentrating on the resident individuals only. Yes. Okay. So look at the first part. I think they are given the rates. Normal tax rates starting from 4% to 24%. Look at the slabs. So every 600,000, rate starting from 4% to 24%, 20% increase. First 600,000 4%, next 600,000 8%, next 600,000 12%, next 600,000 16%, and next 600,000 20%. That means up to 3 million rupees your liabilities 360,000 work out in short. Thereafter any taxable income in excess of 3 million will be subjected to tax at 24%. So that normal rate will apply subject to the following. When you say subject to the following, you have to give a preference for this before applying the normal rates. So what are they? The case of a gain from realization of investment asset, So that we discussed already in a separate tutorial. We call generally capital gain source. So Inland Revenue Act is not covered as a capital gain. It tells you as a wording of gain from realization of investment asset. You know what you mean by investment asset? That we discussed so many times. They are the capital asset held as a part of investment. Again, we had to go to the capital asset definition. Everything we discussed in earlier chapters. So when you realize in that gain, the gain is taxable at 10% rate. Then in the case of retirement benefits, again I would have discussed under employment income, slightly touch on that. That are defined in the Revenue Act. What are the retirement benefits are? Where the lower rate of tax is applicable depending on the period of employment or period of contribution. Then thirdly, the case of business consisting of betting and gaming, liquor or tobacco, the applicable tax rate is 14%. Therefore, you have to understand properly, the individual tax, there is no special rate except for these three. What are they? Capital gain has to be taxed at 10%. Retirement benefits should be taxed at lower rate depending on the rate. Lower rate of taxes depends on the ownership, employment period as well as contribution period. Then the business point coming from the gaming, betting and gaming, liquor or tobacco should be taxed at 14%. Except these three, all other provident income should be taxable at the rate of normal rate starting from 4% to 24%. Okay. So therefore, if an individual engage in export business, what are the tax rates? Is it 14%? No. We discussed that is for company tax. If an individual engage in educational services, is it 14% like a company tax? No. Normal rate. If individual engage in agriculture business, is it 14% like a company tax? No. Again, normal rate. Now remember, the normal rate is not given for individual. As the normal rates are given for individual, you don't apply for the other special rates. What are given for a corporate taxation. What is logic on that? I think I am not in favor of that, but there could have been somewhat logic. Because the individuals, normally you are given a tax-free allowance, your rate starting from not 28% like a company. There's a lower slabs are given. So once you given a slabs, again you are not supposed to apply the lower rate. That could have been the logic in drafting the law. But one can say the other side, no, if you apply for a company's lower rate, why you can't give it for the individual? No, especially for the agriculturalists, the farmers and all. If the incomes are increased, their rate is 24%. Some it looks like absurd. Anyway, those things are considered and come to new amendment out of 1st January 2020. But as I told you last week also, I have not taken into account those amendments still in my calculation. Let's look at the last month where we look at the real amendments taken, because now what is happening is there are some amendment comes in, so another amendment comes or to supersede that. No, keep on amending the law or keep on giving a clarifications. In that situation, when I am working against the sum, I don't think that's not correct. You also get confused again if I keep on changing the same thing. No. Now let's take up last month where I know in that case all the amendment would have been stabilized. So that point of time we can take up the amendment and discuss those real effective amendment only. Some are applicable, mostly applicable after 1st January 2020. Yeah, retirement benefit. If you go through retirement benefit, The Roman 2 are given tax bracket depending on the period of employment or period of contribution, right? Where the period of contribution or employment is 20 years or less. As you know, we go to the tube in page number 27. First 2 million, 10%. Next 1 million, 5%. Balance at 10%. Where the period of employment is more than 20 years, first 5 million, 10%. Next 1 million, 5%. Balance at 10%. So only difference is the first 5 million or first 2 million going to be taxed at 10% depending on your employment period or contribution period 20 years or less or more than 20 years. What are the income or retirement benefits should come under this lower rate? Yeah, that's given again. That's given in the first schedule. Discussed already under employment income. But anyway, nevertheless, I'm just repeated again the tute. Amount received in a computation of pension, so aggregate pension, cumulative pension, when you're getting advance at the time of retirement. Amount received as a retiring gratuity. As you know, under the retiring gratuity, if anybody retires after service of employment after 5 years, is entitled for retiring gratuity under the Retiring Gratuity Act. Yeah, you can take any amount of retiring gratuity. What the amount received can be brought into this lower rate of tax. Amount received as a compensation for the loss of office or employment under a scheme which is uniformly applicable to all the employees employed by that person. It's very important, compensation payment. Sometimes at the time of retirement, you are getting compensation also from the employer. So then the compensation are taxable lower rate or not, depending on what? You have to look at whether it's there is scheme paid by the employer, which are uniformly applicable to all the employees. If yes, you got to apply lower rate. Otherwise, maybe subject to normal rate of tax. The amount paid to a person after the retirement from the employee from the Provident Fund approved by the Commission General. I think we discussed the withdrawal from the approved Provident Fund. That part is exempted according to third schedule. So you can say within bracket under D, subject to the exemption. Under D, means within bracket, subject to the exemption. Okay. Then amount paid to a person from a regular Provident Fund also, say within bracket, that we discussed already, subject to the exemptions. Then last point should be F. Amount paid to the out of the employees trust fund. Again, as we go to the third schedule that we discussed, some item are exempted, some component is exempted. What are they? So total investment income earned after 1487 plus, yeah, the total investment income earned after 1487 is exempt from tax. Yeah, what is taxable is, if anybody got any investment income which are attributable for the period prior to 1487 and the total 3% contribution would be liable at the lower rate of tax. I told about the logic behind this 1487, right? So that is the day on which the ETF is made liable for tax. Again, you can mention for ETF as well, within bracket, subject to the exemption. So look at the now question 112. Can I go through question 112, please? So here these two questions I not given the answer, so you have to dictate the answer. I have to dictate the answer, you have to write down. An individual is engaged in cultivating vegetables and fruits. He thinks that he can apply consumption rate of 14% under the Revenue Act on his taxable income, which is comprised of profit from sale of cultivated vegetables and fruits. Advise him. Is that correct? Can you apply 14% applicable for agriculture business? The lower rate? No, you can't apply. Can you note down? There's no special rate of 14% applicable for individuals on the agricultural business. Like for company taxation. As per item 1 of the first schedule. Stop. Therefore, agriculture income also taxable at normal rate of tax in the hands of individuals. Income split by a spouse with other spouse. 34.4. That is basically, we will discuss later on section 34. That is the avoidance of tax or tax avoidance scheme. I addressed under section 34. So 34 subsection 4 is apply for individual tax. And this concept is there in the previous act also. But slightly the wordings are different, but the substance same. If you compare the previous act, I don't know whether you would have not seen the previous act, sometimes some of you. Section 25 subsection 6 I believe. Yeah, 34 subsection 4. Very famous adjustment when it comes to individual taxation. So what is that? Where a spouse receives income for service rendered in a business carried on or exercised by the other spouse or by a partner of which the other spouse is a partner. The income shall be included in the income of the spouse who carry on the business. Again, I will explain in a small way. Let's say this is the business carried on by husband. Your husband's business, wife is working. Let's say. Assume it's a genuine transaction, right? Not the diversion of income. So, look at the husband's P&L account. He's doing a grocery business where wife is working. The husband has to pay salary to wife. Why? Because if somebody else works, they have to pay the salary. So that's a deductible expenses. Likewise, if wife is working, the pay amount of salary is coming up. Salary to wife. Let's say the amount is 1 million. Is it deductible expense? Yeah. Salaries are expense incurred in the production of income as per section 11. The salary is paid to somebody else, you deduct it. So why you can't claim it for salary paid to wife? By nature, the expense is same. You should be able to allow. But though it's allowable deduction, now due to this 34 subsection 4, what is happening? You must add back that income to husband. So what do you do in that case? Effectively, in plus or minus calculation, you have to add back to the plus side. To add back to the plus side, add back to the business income of the husband's grocery shop, not because it's a disallowable item, because of the implication of section 34 subsection 4. Okay? So you must put out that reason. Don't say it's a disallowable expense, then it's technically wrong. It's allowable deduction, the expense incurred the production of income, but I am adding back because of the implication of 34 subsection 4. Let's look at what are the items, what is the scope of this section. Don't try to apply all the payment of wife under this scope or under these provisions. Will you go and apply this provision for all the payment made to another family member? If a father is made a salary to son, will you go and apply? No. So deductible expense. Son has made a payment of salary to a father. Allowable. So allowable, but this apply for a payment from one spouse to other spouse. Either it's a husband made a salary payment to wife, or wife has paid a salary to husband in a business. This question one time before in the exam paper. The wife is doing the business, husband is working. The wife has paid salary to husband. The money. Is it for all the payment? No. That's why I highlighted here, underline please. Income from service rendered only. It should be either in the nature of the employment payment or professional payment, any vocational payment. The service rendered. Maybe the other spouse should have been rendered a service to the business. As a result, you are making the payment. So partnership, what will happen? Let's say look at the partnership. There are three partners are doing partnership ABC, partner A, B, C. We are doing a partnership business where B's wife is working. Then what do you do? Same role. Those deductible expense in the calculation of partnership taxable income or partnership business income calculation, later on that part you must go and add back to whose income? Is it just to add back to the plus side? No. If you just add to the plus side, it's apply for all the three partners. No. No. You have to pay, you are paid salary only, B's wife. So therefore you must add back to the personal taxation of partner B. Not in just plus side. Why? Because there are three partner side involved. By the case of individuals, proprietary business, only one person, you just add back to that part, that particular person. So under, you can add back to the plus side. Doesn't matter. Add back to his own income. So look at the question on this. Question 113. The husband has made following payments to his wife in his business of operating grocery shop. There are three payments involved. The question is to answer. Advise the test implication in relation to the said payments in the hands of husband and his wife. Roman 1. Monthly salary is 200,000 in respect of service rendered in employment. Service rendered as employment. The answer is applicable. This payment is coming within the scope of section 34(4). Write down. This payment is coming within the scope of section 34, subsection 4. Why? Because this payment is for a service rendered by one spouse to the other spouse in his business. Therefore, this payment shall be included as income of the husband. So wife will not be taxed. So what is the logic in this section? Otherwise what will happen is, in a small businesses, the spouse, husband and wife can divert the income, split the income, so that both will get the tax-free limits, tax-free allowance as well as threshold for lower rate of tax. No? So in order to avoid that situation only, there's a provision like this. So there are sometimes even the genuine trans will get caught into this section, can't help. Roman 2. Monthly rent of 50,000 in respect of premises occupied. So this is a rent payment. Will you go and apply this rule again? No. Why? Even though this also payment made by husband to wife in his business, but this payment is not because of the service rendered. The renting. The answer is, the payment of rent is not coming within the scope of section 34(4), as it is not payment for service rendered. Therefore, this payment is a deductible expense in the hands of husband in computing business income. We are under section 11. Express income in the production of income. The wife is assessable on the rent received under investment income. That is investment income, wife said. So there are two different transactions. Or transaction will have impact on two different persons. Like a outsider, no? Because it's a rent payment, not the payment for service rendered. Number 3. Monthly interest of 50,000 in respect of loan given to the business. The wife has given a loan to husband for his business. So when you make in the payment, here again, the payment of interest is not coming within the scope of section 34(4), as it is not payment for service rendered. Therefore, this payment is a deductible expense in the hands of a husband in computing business income. Maybe section 12. Section 11 you are allowing. Section 12 tells you if the loan is used for the business purpose, that is deductible expense as an expense incurred in the production of income. The wife's and this income become interest nature, But interest, as we know, for individual taxation, it become a final withholding payment. The wife is assessable on the interest income as final withholding payment. But here there's no deduction applicable, 5%. Because section 84 doesn't apply for a withholding for an individual to another individual. Unless carrying on a business, yes. Whether withholding deducted or not doesn't matter. The wife's hand, they become a final withholding payment. So the question comes here, the second one and third one, the section is not applicable generally because rent is generally understood as not for the payment for service rendered. Interest payment for the loan given also not in general terms due to service rendered. But one can further argue for a financial services VAT. Because if you are providing a financial services, now, from income tax point of view, generally, it's not because service centered. Yeah. What is intended here, service centered means maybe due to the service of employment, professional, vocational, something else, right? Something like that. Not that what is intended for a financial service or anything like that, right? Okay. Basically labor, providing a labor, as well as professional service. So now we look at the question number 1. Question number 1. Here, we'll concentrate on question number 1 now. Basically, can you read the question, please? Question 1. I give about 5 minutes. Can you go through the question, please? That's about the overall test computation. Shall I start? So I given the answer, but don't look at the others for the time being. We'll go through the sum. You are provided with the following financial information of Dr. Nanayakara for the year of ASMA 1920. The final requirement is determined for the following for the year of ASMA 1920 is taxable income, is income tax payable on taxable income, and final withholding payments. Look at the first taxable income calculation. Where you have to take up all the four sources of income, where applicable, and give a qualifying payment and relief deduction under section 52. He is employed in a government hospital by the Minister of Health. It's a government officer. So, doctor. He has received following payment during the year. Salary of 4,200,000. Yeah, even the government employment now it's exempt from, is not exempted, is liable for income tax. Only retirement benefit, pension only exempt for a government employment, not for the current employment. Current employment is liable for tax. There is no exemption given under section 3rd schedule. Go to 3rd schedule. 3rd schedule is the only schedule where you can apply the exemption. Go to the 3rd schedule, very clear. For a public officer or government employee, there is exemption applicable only for pension and payment for past service rendered. On-count payment of 1,300,000, that's also liable. So both are liable. The hospital has deducted the tax of 672,000 during the year. Maybe PAY tax, that's a tax credit. Basically, these are the addition of employment income. These two items. Number 2. He operates a medical center on his own at his residence situated in Rathmalana, doing a private practice. Again, the service is a medical service, but this income is what? The business income. As you know, under the new Illa Revenue Act, the profession also include under business. So it's a business income. But that rendered services, same service rendered in the government hospital, employment. Why? Because that is under the contract of employment. Here, independent consultation. It's a business. Profit of 3 million is arrived at in the following. That's my accounting profit. Salary paid to his wife for maintaining accounts, 1,200,000. Those are deductible now. As per section 34, subsection 4, that amount should be added back as income of the doctor, because it's a payment for service rendered to the spouse. The salary paid to his son in assisting medical service of 900,000. That's a deductible expenses. So that will be visible in the hands of son. Its expense for meals, refreshment, etc. 950,000. Can you claim? No. In his medical shop, this expense sound is for his own. These are basically his domestic expenses. According to section 197, you go through the 197. It's a dedicated section to define domestic expenses. That is not deductible expense. The definition is given under section 197, but operating section disallow the domestic expenses, section 10, 1B, Roman 1. Okay? You have to add back. He has purchased a medical equipment for a sum of 2 million through a loan. Interest paid for the loan is 150,000. So 150,000 would be a deductible. Assume the loan interest only charged to the P&L account. Deductible because the loan is used for the business purposes. You can elevate under section 12. But apart from that, for the medical equipment, you can claim capital allowance as per 4th schedule. Clear? Under section 16, you can claim capital allowances. The capital allowances calculation are given in fourth schedule. You can claim 2 million rupees over 5 years period, 400,000 rupees each. I think apart from that, I think for a medical expense, so that is operating a medical expense profit. Number 3, one of his houses situated in Rotehena has been rented out for a monthly rent of 100,000 since December 2018. So it's a rent income, it's investment income. He has received the relevant monthly rental on or before 10th of the same month, except for the rent for the month of February and March 2020. Maybe due to coronavirus. So last 2 months he has not got a rent income, but got it in rent for these 2 months were received only in May 2020. So how many months rent you have to count? Yes, you know, if you go to section 21, subsection 2, for individuals, the employment income and investment income should be taxed on cash basis. They have to count only 10 months rent. Maybe 1 million rupees. 100,000 for 10 months, 1 million rupees. Though it's given for 12 months, income he got it only for 10 months. He has paid the following expense in relation to rent. Rates 5,000 per quarter. Deductible? Yes. Section 11. If you go to section 11, can you go to section 11 please? Yeah. All the expenses are incurred in the production of income of a business or investment. Even for investment income calculation, the section 11 is applicable. I told you carefully go through, we look at the allowable deductions. There are some allowable deductions applicable only for business. Some allowable expenses applicable for business as well as investment income also. So the section 11 is applicable for a calculation of business income as well as investment income. Cost of improvement in April 2009 for 95,000. Can you apply section 14? Improvement cost? No, why? No, it's not a depreciable asset. You not used for the business purpose. Section 14 is out. You can't claim. So the only section you can claim is section 11. But section 11 I don't think we can claim. What is the reason? Yeah. According to section 11 subsection 2, any expense of a capital nature you can't claim. So what do you mean by capital nature? The expense require a benefit for longer than 12 months. So the improvement results in benefit more than 12 months. Therefore you can't claim. Somebody can argue, though it's incurred in the production of income, you can't claim because it's a capital nature expense. Clear? Interest paid on the loan to purchase the house, 80,000. Yeah, you can claim under section 12. Why? The loan is used for the business purpose or investment purpose. This is an investment income purpose. Therefore, the interest element you can claim. According to the rent agreement, Dr. Nanakar has undertaken to repair the property. However, no repair is made during the year. Where is given? Yeah, for individuals, repair, you can give repair allowance 25% of the rent income, rental income, as a relief. That is given after calculating the total assessable income, right? Relief would be applicable because of the undertaken. He has undertaken to repair. That is enough, not based on the actual repair cost. Being an owner, he has undertaken to repair the expense. If so, he is entitled for 25% allowance on the rent income. Number 4. Total non-occurrence receipt following interest during the year of assessment. So interest is basically on, though it's investment income, for individuals and it's a final withholding payment as per section 88. I think we went through so many times section 88 to go through. The second item is what? Any interest accrued to an individual is a final withholding payment. Sum of 120,000 from National Savings Bank for the investment treasury bills. Sum of 142,500. The treasury interests are not subject to withholding tax as per section 84. If you go through, we'll discuss section 84 later on in detail. 142,500 net from commercial bank for investment in deposit. 5% withholding tax deducted by the bank. Sum of 95,000 net from XY PLC for the investment in debentures. Sum of 100,000 from his friend for the loan given. So anyway, whether some are subjected to withholding tax, some are not subjected to withholding tax. Nevertheless, the interest income in the hands of individual is, remember, it's a final withholding payment. Though it doesn't come under the scope of taxable income. It's the second component of income tax liability, right? The source of income you have to work out for a taxable income or assessable income coming from the taxable income. Here received a sum of 68,800 net from a ABC PLC as a dividend during the year of assessment 1920. Again, the first item under section 88 is what? The dividend received from a resident company become a final withholding payment. That is for individual as well as corporate to anybody. Dividend is a final withholding payment. Number 6. Here disposed an apartment in July 2019 for a sum of 35 million, which was acquired by him in May 2020. It's an old apartment. He has incurred the following expense in relation to this apartment. What is this? Realization of his apartment in his hand. What is this asset? Yeah, land and building is a capital asset. Is a capital asset of the business or the capital asset held as a part of investment? In his hand, the capital asset held as a part of investment. Therefore, it become a investment asset. So the gain arising from the realization of investment asset is taxable as investment income, may be subjected to 10% tax rate, capital gain. 35 million is his consideration received. What expense he has incurred? Cost of acquisition of 50 million, but you can't claim. Why? Yeah, this was acquired prior to 30th September 2017. Therefore, since you could claim market value, the actual cost may not be able to claim again. Otherwise, there will be a double claim. Stamp duty paid 599,000. That is again at the time acquisition. That is already absorbed into the market value. You can't claim that. Yes, being trying to dispose the property since July 2017. For the purpose of this disposal, he has obtained a valuation report from the independent valuer in September 2017. According to the valuation report, market value of the property as of 30th September 2017 was 30 million. So that amount is deductible. So as you know, as per section 203, subsection 4, what? Transitional provision. Any investment asset held as at 30th September 2017, the cost of the asset is market value as at that date. Is it clear? He has paid a sum of 950,000 to the broker as commission. That is a incidental expense at the time of sale. So that is not included in your market value. Therefore, you can claim on that. The basic calculation of capital gain is, consider receipt 35 million. His cost will be The market value as of 30th September 2017, 30 million. And commission expense, that is incidental expenses, 950,000 rupees. He has paid relevant capital gain tax within 1 month to the Commission General. So we have discussed already. The capital gain, we have to work out when. We have to calculate the capital gain and discharge the capital gain tax liability within 1 month from the date of disposal. What is important here? Yeah, though the examiner has given an indication in calculating a final tax liability, claim the tax credit of the capital gain tax paid. He has brought forward the tax loss of 1,300,000 from the year of 1819. Losses from what? Yeah, it would have been grocery shop or any other business, doesn't matter. So you can claim business loss, you can claim against the business income. A business income during the year is a medical center operation. On that you can claim. That is section 19 claim. He has donated a sum of 150,000 during the year of 1920 to an approved charitable institution. Being an institution established for caring a sick or needy people. It's a qualifying payment. It's a donation in money to an approved charitable institution. All three conditions satisfied. Therefore, it's a qualifying payment. But according to 5th schedule, you can claim maximum what? Yeah, 75,000 rupees for individual taxation. He has paid self-assessment tax of 300,000 during the year of 1920. Now, that is a tax credit. Determine the following for the year of 1920. One is taxable income. So look at the answer. I given the calculation from page 38 onwards. Shall we go through? Question 1, Dr. Nanayakara, taxable income 1920. The employment income, the government hospital, salary and on-call payment, added back, total 5.5 million is employment income. Income from business, medical center, accounting paid 3 million, salary paid to his wife, added back under 34 subsection 4 as the income of the husband. Domestic expenses are not allowable, or the salary paid to son allowable under section 11. Yes, no, added back. But his domestic expenses are disallowable under section 10, 950,000. Interest paid. The loan is used for the business purposes to get a medical equipment. You can claim under section 12. The capital allowance you can claim under section 16. Medical equipment over 5 years period. 2 million over 5 years, 400,000. Apart from that, the loss brought forward I claim 1,300,000 under section 19. So the net calculation of business income is 3,450,000 rupees. Okay? The income from investment, rent income. Rent income I have taken up for 10 months only. I accrued for 12 months, but deducted the last 2 months rent we are not received. So I tax on the cash basis 1 million rupees. Less rates. I claim under section 11, 20,000. Improvement not allowed under section 11 because of capital nature expenses. Interest paid under section 12 you can claim because the loan is used for investment purpose to obtain the asset. You can claim. So 900,000 is my rent income. By interest income I have not worked out because it's final withholding payment, not coming under the scope of source of income. D loan also same, it's a final withholding payment, not coming under the source of income. Gain from realization of investment asset. Consider receipt 35 million. Less cost, market value as 30th September 2017, 30 million. Commission paid, that is incidental expenses 950,000. So 30 million 950,000 is a total deduction. So 4,050,000. So 4,050,000 plus 900,000. If you added back, total investment income you bring it to the last column. Not 4,050,000. It should be 4,950,000. Please correct that. once you added back that, the last column should read now, total should be read as not 30 million, 30,900,000. So I omitted the 900, that is the reason. Added back 30,900,000. In page number 38, take the total as 30,900,000. $30,900,000. That is the last entry in page number 38. Okay. The reason is 900,000 we have omitted. That's the reason. But the next page 39, I think I repeated something wrong there. Capital gain calculation should delete. That's a repeat. Okay. Complete should be removed. Sorry for that. Then from 30,900,000 you deducted what? Qualifying payment and relief. Qualifying payment donation to approved charity, though the amount is 150,000, you can maximum claim 75,000 as per 5th schedule. Reliefs, yeah, tax-free allowance 500,000. Apart from that, employment relief you can claim maximum 700,000, but we have employment income up to 5.5 million. Allowance for rental income 900,000, on that 25% I deducted 225,000. That is a repair allowance on the investment income, on the investment asset. Total qualifying payment relief comes to 1,500,000. So then the total taxable income, read as taxable income, should be 13,900,000 minus 1,500,000 equal to 12,400,000. So taxable income should be 12,400,000. Please correct that. Okay. Now I come to income tax payable, part 2. Tax on taxable income. First you work out what? Before working out the normal tax rate, you would apply capital gain. According to first schedule, item 1. 4,50,000, I applied 10% rate, 405,000. The balance is subject to normal rate. So either you can apply the normal rate from 600,000 each or take the total, but I prefer you to apply in your examination slabs one by one, because sometimes there may be some marks given for a application of slabs. I given in short up to 3,360,000. The balance 5,350,000 at 24%. So comes to total 2,049,000. Tax credit PAY, that is a government employment department has deducted 672,000 PAY tax. Tax on capital gain 405,000. Why I given the credit? Because there's indication in the question the capital gain tax is paid within 1 month. This will have paid 405,000 obviously. A self-assessment tax paid 300,000 given the last item of the sum. So 1,377,000. So 672,000 is my balance tax payable, income tax payable. That's on taxable income. Then if you want, you can work out the tax on final withholding payment. If they require you to calculate, you calculate that one also. There is section 88. Items multiply by withholding tax rates given in the item 10 of the first schedule. Treasury interest 120,000 is a gross interest. There is no subject withholding tax applicable there. Work out 5%. Withholding tax rate on interest is 5%. You apply that 6,000. Bank deposit from a commercial bank. Gross it up and deduct 5%. Apply 5%. 7,500. But that 7,500 of course bank has already deducted. Demerger from XY PLC, again gross it off 1 million into 5%, 5,000. That amount again deducted by the company. Loan from friend 1 million, 100,000 to 5%, 5,000. That amount of course not deducted. The friend paid interest to another friend. They are not subject. That amount is not subject to withholding tax. On dividend, ABC PLC deducted already. Therefore, I apply the same thing. Gross it up and apply 14%, 11,200. 34,700 is my final withholding tax liability, out of which relief as paid by withholding agent. That means the withholding agent, if you already deducted and paid the tax, that amount is relieved. They have a balance payable of 11,000 rupees. That's on the question. That's the overall calculation, but I don't think the examiner, if suppose the examiner tested the examination paper, he won't test sometimes the entire process of calculation, some adjustment, implication. You want to address the implication, you should know what the implication of the tax for individual taxation. But what I did was I had done the overall sums. Then you know the entire picture, no? If you know the entire picture, you can advise whatever the question comes, okay? That's the purpose behind this. Sometimes there may not be a question like this in exam paper, but still is very useful. You know, from the beginning to end, you know how the calculation will be impacted for the individual taxation. Okay, that's the main idea behind this particular sum. But to proceed the individual tax, the other final item is undisclosed income calculation. But according to my understanding, though this part is given in your syllabus, especially the previous syllabus, there was not much question tested in your previous syllabus. I don't think there was question tested for the last 5 years. Unpopular area, but in your syllabus still that part is available. So I can't take a risk. So that is the reason behind, even though your question, the exam paper, it has not been tested frequently or in the recent past, but I have to do my obligation. Suddenly if an examiner tests that, you should know what to do. That's the reason we are going to discuss this particular topic, okay? Because what is an undisclosed income first? Just go through this one. An undisclosed income is simply an income not accounted for the purpose of taxation. In account income which are not accounted for tax purposes is undisclosed income. It's a black money, in other words. Every economy in the world, including Sri Lanka economy, has some element of undisclosed income, no? You can't have it 100%. But some countries very less, some countries very high compared to GDP. That means you are not paid tax on that particular income, unaccounted income, especially on the income tax. Of course, if you declare for sales taxes, definitely you get caught in the income tax purpose. So therefore, obviously, some of this income, even if it is subject to sales taxes, that is also not paid for. So it's a very problem for a government also, because the due revenue to the government is not getting because of this problem, undisclosure or non-disclosure. That's the reason the government also giving or provide or carrying out audit, tax audit for certain activities in detail. Especially investigation department is formed for what? To investigate the matter of a certain taxpayers to see whether his declaration is correct. If not for not done proper declaration, they can quantify that amount and assess him and collect the tax, the due tax revenue to the government. An individual being a citizen of a country is obliged to disclose his total income liable for income tax in his return of income filed with the Inland Revenue. It's obligation for citizen, right? You must disclose your correct income and pay tax. When there's an undisclosed income in his return, it will result in a revenue loss to the government. And when revenue authority finds such non-disclosure, it will result in serious consequences to him, including imposing a penalty provision to the extent of imprisonment. Especially the new Inland Revenue Act also, there is a huge penalty involvement for undisclosed income. We discuss later on the penalty provision or penal provision. Apart from this, revenue can impose penalty, fine, etc. Such personal tax matter will therefore subject to search and investigation in detail. Thereafter, once you get caught into the undisclosed income, there will be what? Thereafter, your file will be labeled by the tax department as a fraudulent taxpayer. Thereafter, continuous audit will be carried on. No? So you have to be very careful. You have to make sure that there's no undisclosed involved in your tax return. Okay? Under this circumstance, it is vital to note that a taxpayer must disclose his entire source of income with accurate amounts. That is obligation. But in case if there is undisclosed income, how do you quantify by the revenue officers? It's another challenge. Go through investigation. Someday, even if they carry through the investigation, you can't come up with the exact amount of undisclosed income, no? So the revenue officers must find out certain shortcut method or some strategies or some tools to find out the undisclosed income. What are the tools used for to find out the undisclosed income? Generally, a limited liability company whose financial statements are audited by the chartered accountants cannot have any undisclosed income since total assets are disclosed in the balance sheet. So I don't think there will be a huge problem for a corporate tax here, where the corporates are subjected to audit by chartered accountants, no FARs. So they are going to prepare the balance sheets for total assets and how it has been financed. As far as the total assets are already brought into the capital, the balance sheet, then there are called many undisclosed income. However, in case of an individual, since there is no such a preparation of balance sheet, one can leave out certain asset from his declaration by mistake or otherwise. So the problem comes most of the case undisclosed income for individual taxation. Why? Because the individuals are not preparing the balance sheet. Therefore, sometime they may omit certain asset, maybe by mistake or otherwise. It will be difficult to find out. Cross-check. The reason we normally look at the individual taxes are much difficult than the corporate tax. Why? Because there is no preparation of balance sheet. What are the information what is given by taxpayer? We have to rely on that. No other way. Of course, we can find out certain techniques to see whether is information given is accurate or not. But not 100% you can make sure that, no. All depending on his information. Revenue officers may perform certain calculations based on the information obtained from a taxpayer and from third party to find out the undisclosed income. The taxpayer himself may carry out the required calculation to make sure that the source of income declared by him is in line with the asset belonging to him, to make sure that there is no undisclosed income. So this calculation will be relevant for a revenue officer. For what? To find out the undisclosed income of taxpayer and assess him. Sometimes the taxpayer himself might do a calculation on his own to see whether income declared in his return is in line with my assets and liability declaration. If you are reconciled with my declaration, assets and liability, then I can make sure that what? There is no problem in my tax return. But wherever, if it doesn't reconcile, I may have to further investigate, see the accuracy of the information declared in my return as income. This could be done either by a revenue officer or by taxpayer himself, maybe tax consultant, not taxpayer. Tax consultant also can carry out this work. What are the methods applicable for a disclosed or undisclosed income? There are two methods widely applicable. First method we call receipt and payment account method. Second method we call net wealth reconciliation method. We'll explain one by one and we do a sum on both. First you take receipt and payment method. It's basically cash book. Technically, total receipt in a year of assessment should be supported with the total payment as well as savings or investment made in that year of assessment. Receipt and payment account, if you work out small T account, as you know, we are used to that T account. Total receipt you declare here, different receipts. Payment would be what? Expenditure, saving or investments. Payment also you define, put on here, this side. So in other words, the total payment is the investment and saving made during the year of assessment should be supported by the total receipt technically. Because there can't be a payment goes out of your pocket without any receipt, no. Accordingly, under this method, the receipt and payment account is prepared in a year of assessment to reconcile these figures. When identifiable payments, investment and saving are greater than the identifiable receipts, whether taxable or not, the difference is to be treated as unidentified and unexplained receipt, which could be interpreted by the Inland Revenue as undisclosed income in a year of assessment. Normally, that's the reason they ask for a. Sometimes we will see sometimes that some taxpayer getting a letter from the tax department calling for details of receipt and payment account. When you prepare receipt and payment account, what happens? Your total payment, let's say this side, is higher than my receipt. Then means what? Then you are got exposed with the opening and closing balance cash. You can do cash receipt and payment account together with your all the bank account together with the cash in hand. So if it doesn't support, the receipt is, if there's a gap in my receipt, the Inland Department will say what? You can't explain that gap, therefore we will take that as a undisclosed income and the raise assessment as undisclosed income. That is very problematic, no? When it's undisclosed income means that you are done a fraudulent thing. As much as possible, you must be able to support your total receipt with the payments. It is understood that every payment is to be supported by either income receipt, realization of asset or creation of obligation in the form of a loan or advance, etc. If it cannot be supported, it is questionable and the dispute on undisclosed income may arise to the taxpayer. For example, if you buy a land for 10 million rupees, you put a land 10 million. Moment 10 million rupees land, then you must know one day, if Inland Department call for that information, I got the money for 10 million, I must be able to explain, I got this 10 million rupees due to what? either from my income declared or from my savings realization or realization of my asset. I sold one asset and bought another asset. Or I obtain a loan to buy the property. So one of these should be there. Otherwise, there's a problem, no? Then you have to be very careful. Okay? So now shall we put into the question now? Question number 2. Can you look at the question number 2, please? I give you about 2-3 minutes. Can you go through question number 2, please? It is basically like a cashier. You don't look at the income tax implication. Just prepare the what is the amount received, you put down the debit side, cash book, what is the amount paid, put it to the credit side. That's all. We are done in the basic accounting. The part 1 is to work out the resident payment account, right? Find out the other income based on the resident payment account. Sinimal Gunasekara, a chartered engineer, has worked in an engineering service by the government and retired at the end of June 2019 at the age of 60. He was an engineer from the government service, retired and at the age of 60 in June 2019. During the year of small retirement occurred. Immediately after the retirement, he started a consultancy firm. His business during the year was included in the following assignment abroad: country, departure, arrival to Sri Lanka, travel cost. Maldives, 15 July 2019 he departed, arrived 25th August 2019, 90,000 rupees travel cost. Malaysia, 30th August 2019, arrival 1st November 2019, travel cost 60,000. Proper books of accounts of the business had not been maintained. After investigation of his available document, following information was revealed. So why we are working on the resident payment account is what? Here, not the undisclosed income, to find out his business income. The main income is missing because of what? We cannot prepare the proper books of accounts. That's the reason. Therefore, here the gap comes because of the business, not the undisclosed. Okay? Salary and other benefit from the government. You go to cash book. Can you go to the cash book? Look at the answer. Answer is given in page number 40. We can compare. 500,000 is there in the debit side, correct? Retiring gratuity, 1,350,000 debit side. Pension from government, 270,000 debit side. Those are three payment receipts. Don't worry about whether exempt or liable. Don't look at the tax implication. It doesn't matter for us. We are now reconciling the receipt and payment. That's all. Foreign income, 2 million, but expended air travel under 50,000, food and lodging under 75,000, sundry expense 100,000. So, after deducting of 425,000, he left with 1,575,000. Total as saving had been remitted to Sri Lanka through his bank. So that amount, I accounted the net amount 1,575,000 into the debit side. Okay. The cash in hand and at bank as at April 1st, 2019, 300,000, 150,000 are taken as opening balance. During the year, he has purchased a car worth 7.5 million. His payment side. Shares in commercial bank 1.3 million. New house 8.5 million. There's big investments are made. All three are given in the payment side. He must be able to explain how he got the money. During the year, he had paid 225,000 loan repayment for outstanding housing loan. You must find out the money. You must explain how he got the money for loan payment. Payment side. Interest on loan 200,000, again payment. Life insurance premium 150,000, again premium, payment. Estimated cost of living 3,750,000. If you put a cost of living too much, you have a problem. Why? You must be able to explain that. Some people think that if you show the too much living expense, you get some kindness from the tax department. No, nothing like that. If you have a more living expense, means it's a problematic for you. Why? Because you have to explain how you got the money to incur those living expense. Okay? And daughter's wedding expenses 1.8 million. That also you have to explain. So all these are payments, you see. He won a lottery prize 1,720,000 net of tax. That is one explanation, the debit side. Tax paid in the year 650,000. You must find out, give a reason how you got the money to pay the tax. Payment side. He disposed one of his indirect property for 4.5 million. That's a relief. the debit side, big part, because 4.5 million he can cover because of what? You sold the property. Market value of the property as of 30 September 2017 was 4 million. There is no bearing over the cash book. That is for tax purposes, calculation purpose. So 4.5 million debit side. Donation to the government hospital 250,000, village temple 150,000 payment side. Cash in an NRF's account, closing balances 300,000, 400,000 credit side. So work out now debit and credit. What is happening? Yeah, credit is higher. 25 million, 175,000 total in the credit side. So the gap is 40 million, 810,000, but that is not actually other income. It should be what? It's a business income. Correctly speaking, is consultancy income or other income. 40 million, 810,000 is a gap. Okay. That's the way you have to find out this. We are going to find out the give an expenditure one by one for each and every expenditure, total expenditure. Part 2. Income tax payable by Mr. Gunasekara for the year of as per 1920. That's a test. Yeah, take into account the cash book, you can work out now. What is the income? Employment income 500,000, current employment. Retiring gratuity and the pensions are exempt from tax as per third schedule. So employment income is 500,000. Income from business, net income from consulting services abroad 1,575,000. But you got a money in foreign currency, foreign income, but you can give a relief. Up to 50 million relief he can claim for foreign currency income as per fifth schedule, right? For individual taxation. But first you have to take it as source. Investment income, winning from lottery. If you go to section 88, item 3 is what? Winning from lottery is again is a final withholding payment, not a source of income. Gain for realization investment asset, 4.5 million consideration received. Cost of the asset is market value as of 30th September 2017, 4 million, so 500,000. Other income, there's a gap on the receipt and payment account, 40,810,000. If you add it back, you get a total of 70,385,000. The qualifying payment relief under section 52. Qualifying payment is donation to the government. You can claim 100% 250,000. Relief, tax-free allowance 500,000. The employment income, you can maximum claim 700,000, but you have only a 500,000. You have to claim limited to 500,000. That means I am making use of the 500,000 only for employment. The tax-free allowance I am claiming 500,000 for the other source. Income earned in foreign currency 1,575,000. So that all less that amount declared and nullify here. You can go up to 50 million provided what? You are earning the money in foreign currency. That's it. Local currency income you don't get, only foreign currency earnings. Effectively, up to 50 million foreign currency earnings are something like exempt from tax. Why is not exempt? Why? Because the exemption, if you have exempted, it should be given in the third schedule, right? But this is nothing in the third schedule. So liable source, but the benefit is granted in the form of, not exempted in the form of relief. That's what happened. So taxable income comes to 40,560,000. Clear? Look at the income tax payable. Tax on taxable income, capital gain 500,000 at 10% 50,000. The balance normal rate 3,360,000. Balance at 11,060,000 at 24%. So 3,064,400 minus self-assessment tax paid 650,000. Claim, assuming that is for the year of assessment 1920. So income tax payable comes to 2,414,400. So tax and final withholding payment we have to count only for, so that liability is relieved because the government authority or the person who making the payment or reward, withholding agent should have deducted the withholding tax. Therefore, my liability is relieved. Liability is 280,000 rupees. This I given finally. Tax and final withholding payment is relieved since withholding tax has been deducted. Okay. That is through a receipt and payment account. Now, shall we have a 15 minutes break? We'll start the question number 3 thereafter.